His hands were still trembling when he set the phone down. Not from fear, but from the weight of what he'd just sacrificed. Ethan Walker had 15 minutes to make the interview that could change everything. 15 minutes to save his son's future. But the woman trapped beneath concrete, her eyes finding his through the dust and chaos. She had maybe 5. Fate had always forced this man to choose between a dozen impossible things, yet somehow kneeling there in a stranger's blood, ruining the only suit he owned, he'd never felt more certain about anything in his life. He and his son might have to leave that house, leave this city, but that was better than turning away from the woman for whom right now he was her entire world. The morning had started at 5:00 a.m. in the cramped Mission District apartment. Ethan moved through the darkness with practiced silence, starting coffee before waking his 7-year-old son, Noah. The kitchen was small enough that only one person could stand at the counter, but Ethan had learned to make it work. He always made it work. On the counter sat a small robot Noah had built from cardboard and spare parts, one leg dangling by a thread of tape. Ethan picked it up with the careful attention of someone who understood how broken things fit together. The robot's right arm had come loose too, and the painted smile looked more like a grimace now. Noah had named it Astro 7, insisting the 7 was critical because it was his lucky number. Ethan turned the small creation in his hands, feeling the weight of his son's imagination. He'd fix it before Noah woke up. Ethan retrieved his small toolkit from beneath the sink and sat at their fold-out table. His fingers, calloused from years of mechanical work, moved with precision despite their size. He reinforced the leg joint with a dab of proper glue rather than tape, then secured the arm with a small brace he fashioned from a paperclip. Small fixes that would make a world of difference to Noah. The morning light had just begun filtering through the apartment's single window when Ethan noticed the envelope he'd been avoiding. It sat on the counter where he'd left it last night, the hospital logo in the corner, like an accusation. He set down the repaired robot and picked up the bill. 4 years since Sarah's accident, and they were still paying. The medical debt had nearly drowned them at first. Now it was more like a constant weight on his chest, not quite suffocating, but never allowing a full breath either. Ethan opened the envelope. His eyes scanned past the sympathetic language to the number at the bottom, and his stomach tightened. Behind that bill was another notice, this one from the bank. 60 days until they'd initiate foreclosure proceedings if he couldn't catch up on the mortgage. 2 months to find a way to keep the only home Noah had known since he was 3. But today could change everything. Today was the final interview at Montgomery Corporation, one of the biggest engineering firms on the West Coast. He'd already passed 2 grueling rounds competing against 200 other applicants. Now he was one of 5 finalists. The position would triple his current salary. It would mean Noah could have the life he deserved, not just the life they could afford. Ethan slipped the notices back into the envelope and pushed it under a cookbook. Today was about possibilities, not problems. The gray suit hanging on the bathroom door was slightly worn at the cuffs, but pressed and ready. It was the only suit he owned, and today it had to make him look like someone worth promoting to the big leagues. The coffee maker finished its cycle with a final sputter and hiss. Ethan poured himself a cup and drank it black, leaning against the counter. Through the thin walls, he could hear Mrs. Johnson next door already up and moving around. The elderly widow had been their neighbor since they moved in often, watching Noah when Ethan had to work late. She'd been Sarah's friend too, one of the few connections to his wife that remained vibrant, rather than painful. Ethan moved to Noah's small bedroom, the robot repaired and ready to return. His son slept sprawled across the bed, one arm dangling off the side, dark hair wild against the pillow. So much like Sarah, it sometimes caught Ethan off guard. The same determined set to his jaw, even in sleep, the same long eyelashes. He set Astro 7 on the nightstand and gently shook Noah's shoulder. Noah shuffled into the kitchen at 6:30, hair sticking up, eyes puffy with sleep. Ethan had scrambled eggs and toast waiting orange juice in the only uncracked cup they owned. Noah spotted the robot, immediately rushing to examine the repairs. "You fixed him." The tape kept falling off no matter how much I used. Ethan smiled at his son's delight. Astro 7 needed some professional engineering assistance. Just a little reinforcement at the joint points. The paperclip acts as a structural brace for the arm. Noah turned the robot carefully in his small hands, examining the fixes with serious concentration. "That's what I'm going to do too. Fix things and make them better. Just like you." The simple declaration lodged something sharp in Ethan's chest. His son's admiration was both gift and burden. Every day he fought to be worthy of it. Big day, Daddy. Noah's voice was small and hopeful as he turned to his breakfast. Ethan smoothed his son's wild hair. Yeah, buddy, big day. If you get the new job, can we get pizza every Friday? The question hit him in the chest. Such a modest dream for a 7-year-old to have. Ethan forced a smile past the tightness in his throat. When I get the job, we'll get pizza every Friday. Promise. Noah nodded solemnly as though they'd made a sacred pact. Then his expression shifted, a small furrow appearing between his eyebrows. Do you think Mom would be proud of the job, I mean? The question came from nowhere, as they often did with Noah. Sarah had been gone 4 years, but she remained a presence in their daily lives. Not a ghost, but a foundation, someone they both measured themselves against in quiet moments. Ethan sat down beside his son. She'd be proud of both of us, but especially you with your robots and your straight A's in math. Do you miss her? Noah asked, stirring his eggs without looking up. Every day. But Ethan kept his voice steady. It's okay to miss people and still be happy, buddy. Mom would want that most of all. Noah nodded, seemingly satisfied. She told me that once when Grandpa died. That it was okay to be sad and happy at the same time. Ethan felt that familiar ache, the moments Noah remembered that he couldn't possibly remember, too young when Sarah died to have stored such specific memories. Yet they surfaced occasionally, these fragments that Noah held on to with fierce determination, whether actual memories or stories he'd converted into memories through sheer will. At the school gate, Noah wrapped his arms around Ethan's waist. Good luck, Daddy. You're the best engineer in the whole world. Ethan crouched to eye level with his son. And you're the best kid in the whole world. I'll pick you up at 3, okay? He watched Noah disappear through the school doors, then checked his watch. 7:45, the interview was at 9:30 downtown. He'd spent 6 months preparing for this opportunity, working late nights after Noah went to bed, studying Montgomery Corporation's projects, researching their sustainability initiatives, rehearsing answers to every possible question. 2 rounds of interviews already passed. This was the final hurdle. The BART train was crowded with Monday morning commuters. Ethan found a window seat and reviewed his portfolio one last time. The designs he'd created, the innovations he'd proposed to his current company, the solutions that had saved them money and improved efficiency. His current job at Precision Engineering was stable, but limiting. The small firm couldn't offer the kind of advancement or salary that Montgomery could. The projects were smaller, the challenges less stimulating. He'd hit a ceiling there 3 years ago, but with Noah starting school and the medical bills piling up, changing jobs had seemed too risky. Montgomery Station appeared at 9:15. Through the window, Ethan could see the Montgomery Corporation building rising above the street, all glass and steel and promise. 15 minutes to walk 2 blocks and climb to the 14th floor. 15 minutes until his life could finally shift towards something better. The doors opened. Ethan stepped onto the platform, portfolio clutched under his arm, mentally rehearsing his opening statement one more time. And then the world started shaking. At first, it felt like the train was still moving, some trick of momentum. But then the shaking intensified and the platform buckled beneath his feet. People screamed. Overhead lights swayed violently. Glass shattered somewhere in the distance, with a sound like 1,000 wind chimes breaking at once. Ethan grabbed a support column as his portfolio fell, papers scattering across the trembling concrete. Earthquake, 5.8 magnitude, they'd say later, the strongest San Francisco had felt in a decade. The shaking stopped as suddenly as it had started, leaving behind an eerie quiet broken only by distant sirens and people calling out to each other. Ethan's hands were shaking from adrenaline, from the primal response of a body reminded how fragile everything was. He looked at his watch, 9:20, 10 minutes to get to the interview. The building was still standing just 100 yards away. He could still make it if he ran. Ethan bent to gather his scattered papers, shoving them back into the folder with trembling fingers. And that's when he heard it. A sound that cut through all the other noise, quiet and desperate. Help. Someone please help. The voice came from an alley between 2 buildings, barely more than a whisper. Ethan froze, his hand still on his portfolio. He should keep walking, should get to that interview. 6 months of preparation, 2 rounds already passed. This was everything. But his feet carried him toward the alley before his brain could talk him out of it. There, half hidden behind a dumpster pinned beneath a concrete slab that had broken away from the building's facade, was a woman. She was maybe 35, wearing a black blazer now covered in dust and debris. Blood seeped from a gash on her forehead, and her left leg was trapped beneath the concrete at an angle that made Ethan's stomach turn. Her eyes found his through the settling dust, wide and terrified. "Please," she whispered. "I can't feel my leg." Ethan dropped his portfolio. He was moving before he could think, before he could calculate the cost. He knelt beside her, assessing the situation with the same methodical attention he brought to engineering problems. The concrete slab was maybe 200 pounds, resting on her shin. The blood flow suggested a bad break, possibly arterial. She needed help now, or she'd go into shock. "Okay," he said, keeping his voice steady even though his heart was hammering. "I've got you. You're going to be fine." Her eyes locked onto his face, holding onto it like a lifeline. "You should go. There's somewhere you need to be. I can see it in your face. Nowhere important." Ethan lied and pulled out his phone to call 911. The operator's voice was harried, overwhelmed. Multiple emergencies across the city. Ambulances dispatched, but delayed. Could he stay with the victim? Could he provide first aid? Ethan looked at his watch. He turned 25. 5 minutes until the interview started. He thought about Noah's face at breakfast, asking about pizza on Fridays. He thought about the apartment they could barely afford, the bills stacking up, the chance he'd worked so hard for slipping away with every passing second. And then he looked at the woman trapped beneath the concrete, at her eyes that held his, like he was the only solid thing in a world that had just tried to shake itself apart. "I'm staying," Ethan told the operator. "Tell me what to do." He used his tie, that navy blue tie, the only one he owned, as a tourniquet, wrapping it tight above the wound. The woman cried out, and Ethan murmured apologies, anything to keep her conscious. He found pieces of wood in the alley and used them as levers, gradually lifting the concrete enough to pull her leg free. His suit jacket became a pillow. His dress shirt, torn into strips, became bandages. The woman drifted in and out of awareness. During a lucid moment, she tried to focus on his face. "What's your name, Ethan?" "Ethan Walker." "I'm Claire," she whispered. Then her eyes rolled back. Ethan held her hand, checking her pulse every 30 seconds, watching for the ambulance he could hear but couldn't see. He thought about the interview panel waiting 14 floors above them. He thought about the 6 months of preparation, the 2 rounds he'd fought through, the opportunity that was evaporating with every minute that passed. But he didn't let go of Claire's hand. The ambulance arrived at 9:55. By then, Ethan's shirt was soaked with blood that wasn't his, and his hands were covered in grime and concrete dust. The paramedics moved with efficient speed, loading Claire onto a stretcher, praising Ethan's quick thinking as they lifted her into the ambulance. Her eyes fluttered open one more time. She looked at him, really looked at him, as if committing every detail of his face to memory. Her lips moved, forming words he couldn't hear. "Thank you, maybe," or something else. Then the doors closed and she was gone. Ethan stood in the alley for a long moment, looking down at himself. His suit was ruined. His tie was somewhere in the ambulance. His shirt was destroyed. Blood on his cuffs, dust in his hair. He looked like a man who'd been through a war. He walked to the Montgomery Corporation building anyway. The lobby was chaos, people evacuating, security guards directing traffic. Ethan approached the reception desk where a harried woman was fielding phone calls. "I had an interview, 14th floor engineering position." "I'm late." She barely looked at him. "All interviews are canceled after the earthquake. You'll receive an email about rescheduling." "When I don't know, sir, we have to assess building safety first. Please evacuate with everyone else." Ethan nodded numbly and turned away. Outside, he found a bench 2 blocks away and sat down, still processing what had just happened. 6 months of work, 2 rounds of competition, and he'd missed the final interview for a stranger, for someone whose name he barely remembered. Claire. His phone buzzed. An email from Montgomery Corporation. "Dear Mr. Walker, due to today's earthquake, your scheduled interview has been canceled. We will not be rescheduling at this time. Thank you for your interest in Montgomery Corporation." Not rescheduling, not postponed, canceled. They'd already filled the position or decided on another candidate. He was out. Ethan sat on that bench until his hands stopped shaking, until the numbness gave way to something heavier. He thought about Noah waiting at school, expecting good news. He thought about their apartment, about staying in a job that barely paid enough, about never quite getting ahead, no matter how hard he tried. But mostly he thought about Claire's eyes, the way they'd held onto his, like he was saving the world instead of just one person. And he realized he'd made the only choice he could live with, the only choice that let him look his son in the face and teach him what it meant to be a good man. Even if being a good man meant losing everything else. When you have the choice between being right and being kind, choose kind. It was something Sarah used to say. Today he'd chosen kindness over opportunity. Sarah would have understood. He hoped Noah would too someday, though. He wouldn't burden his son with this story yet. Ethan walked to Noah's school, his ruined suit drawing stares. He'd figure out the rest later. Right now, his son needed him. Noah burst through the school doors at 3 o'clock, backpack, bouncing eyes scanning for Ethan. When he spotted his father, his face lit up, then quickly shifted to confusion. "Daddy, what happened to your clothes?" Noah's eyes were wide with concern. "There was an earthquake downtown." "I'm fine, but things got a little messy helping out. Nothing to worry about." Noah studied him with that intense focus children sometimes have, seeing more than adults expect them to. "Did you miss your interview?" Ethan hesitated, then nodded. "I did, buddy. But it's okay. The whole building was evacuating anyway." He didn't mention the email, the finality of the cancellation. There would be time for that later, for adjusting expectations and making new plans. For now, he wanted to protect Noah from disappointment. "So no pizza Fridays." Noah's voice was small but matter-of-fact, already adjusting to reality with the resilience children often show. Ethan knelt down, ignoring the stains on his suit pants. "Hey, pizza Fridays are non-negotiable. We'll figure it out. Promise." Noah grinned, gap-toothed and beautiful. "Can we start this Friday?" "Absolutely." Ethan stood, taking Noah's hand. "What do you say we go home and change, then hit the park for a while?" The days after the earthquake blurred together. Ethan returned to his regular job at Precision Engineering, the same mid-sized firm with the same limiting salary. He didn't tell Noah about the canceled interview and the email that closed that door. Instead, he kept going, kept working, kept pushing forward, because that's what you did when giving up wasn't an option. The additional medical bill he'd been avoiding turned out to be the final notice before collection. Ethan spent his lunch breaks on the phone with the hospital billing department, negotiating a payment plan that would stretch their budget even thinner, but might keep them afloat. The mortgage notice loomed larger as days passed. 60 days now shortened to 47. He started looking into cheaper apartments across town, wondering how Noah would handle changing schools mid-year. At night, after Noah was asleep, Ethan would sit at the kitchen table with spreadsheets and calculators, trying to find numbers that added up to something other than loss. Sometimes in these quiet moments, he'd think of Claire, wondering if she was okay, if her leg had healed, if she remembered the man who'd missed his future to hold her hand in an alley. These thoughts always led back to Sarah, to the hospital room where he'd held her hand as she slipped away, to the promise he'd made to build the life they'd planned together, to raise their son with the values they'd shared. He'd never imagined doing it alone. Some nights the weight of that solitary journey crushed him. Other nights he found strength in knowing exactly what Sarah would have done, what she would have wanted him to do. 3 weeks passed before everything changed. Ethan was at the Mill, a coffee shop on Divisadero Street, working on a project during his lunch break. He came here sometimes when he needed to think, to escape the noise of the office. The place had good Wi-Fi and strong coffee, and the barista knew him well enough to start his order when she saw him walk in. He was focused on his laptop, troubleshooting a design flaw in a production line component, when someone sat down at the table next to his. He glanced up out of habit and felt his heart stop. It was her. Claire, the woman from the earthquake. She looked different now. Professional and polished, her hair styled, the gash on her forehead healed to a faint scar. She was walking with a slight limp, leaning on a cane, but she was alive and whole and sitting 5 feet away from him. Ethan stared, unable to look away. He'd thought about her often in the past 3 weeks, wondered if she was okay, if she'd recovered. But he'd never expected to see her again. Never expected this strange twist of fate. Claire was focused on her phone, didn't notice him watching. The barista called out a name for a drink order, and Claire stood, moving carefully on her injured leg. She reached for the cup. At the same moment, Ethan stood to stretch his legs, and they nearly collided. "Oh, I'm so sorry." Claire stepped back. Then she looked up at his face, and Ethan watched recognition dawn in her eyes. Her expression shifted from polite apology to shock, to something that looked almost like wonder. It's you. Hi, Ethan managed. How's your leg? Claire seemed to struggle for words. I've been looking for you for 3 weeks. The police couldn't find you. The security footage was too blurry. I didn't know your name, couldn't remember. She stopped, pressing a hand to her chest. You saved my life. I just helped until the ambulance came. No, Claire's voice was firm. You saved my life, and then you disappeared. She gestured to an empty table. Can we talk? Please, they sat, and Claire told him what the doctors had said. How if Ethan hadn't stopped the bleeding, hadn't kept her conscious, she likely wouldn't have made it. How she'd spent 3 weeks asking everyone, paramedics, police, hospital staff, trying to find the man in the gray suit who'd pulled her from the rubble. I wanted to thank you. Claire's eyes were bright with emotion. But more than that, I wanted to understand. You were dressed for something important. I remember that even through the pain. You had somewhere to be. An interview, Ethan admitted. Final round at Montgomery Corporation. I'd passed 2 rounds, worked for 6 months to get there. It was a big opportunity. Claire's expression changed, something shifting behind her eyes. Montgomery Corporation, yeah. They canceled it after the earthquake. Didn't reschedule. Ethan tried to keep his voice neutral, but some of the disappointment must have leaked through. What's your full name? Claire asked quietly. Ethan Walker. Why? She closed her eyes for a long moment, and when she opened them, they were bright with unshed tears. Ethan. I'm Claire Montgomery. I'm the HR director at Montgomery Corporation. I was on my way to work when the earthquake hit. I was taking a shortcut through that alley. She paused, her voice breaking slightly. You were coming to interview with me. The words hung in the air between them. Ethan felt like the ground was shifting again, like the earthquake had never really stopped. The woman he'd saved, the interview he'd missed. The same person. I didn't know, he said. When I saw you in the alley, I didn't recognize you from the company photos or anything. I just saw someone who needed help, I know. Claire reached across the table, her hand hovering near his but not quite touching. That's what makes this so... She broke off, shaking her head. Ethan, you gave up everything to save me, and I didn't even know who you were until I got back to the office and saw your name on the canceled interview list. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of coincidence and consequence settling between them. I want to make this right, Claire finally said. I want to give you another chance at that interview. No, the word came out sharper than Ethan intended. He softened his voice. Thank you, but no. I appreciate it, but I can't accept that. Why not? You earned that interview. You competed through 2 rounds. The earthquake cost you an opportunity you deserved. Maybe. Ethan leaned back in his chair. But if I interview now, I'll never know if I got the job because I was qualified or because I saved your life. And I need to know that when I succeed, it's because I earned it, not because someone felt obligated to help me. Claire was quiet, studying his face with an intensity that made him self-conscious. Finally, she spoke. What if it's not about the job? What if it's just about getting to know each other? What do you mean? I mean, Claire hesitated, choosing her words carefully. You saved my life, Ethan. That's not a small thing. And I'd like to know who you are, not as a candidate, not as someone I owe a debt to, but just as a person. Could we do that? Have coffee? Sometimes talk, be friends? Ethan considered this. There was something appealing about the idea, something that felt right. Not transactional, not obligated, just two people who'd been thrown together by circumstance trying to understand what that meant. Okay, he said. I'd like that. So they started meeting for coffee once a week at first. Claire told him about her work at Montgomery Corporation, about the pressure of being the CEO's daughter, about always wondering if people respected her for her skills or just her last name. Ethan told her about Noah, about Sarah's death 4 years ago, about the constant balancing act of being a single father while trying to build a career. They never talked about the interview again, never discussed job opportunities or professional advancement. They were just two people learning each other's stories, finding comfort in honesty and connection. Claire was different from anyone Ethan had met since Sarah died. She listened with her whole body, asked questions that pushed past surfaces, remembered details from previous conversations. She didn't offer empty sympathy about his widowhood, but engaged with his grief as part of who he was, not something to be fixed or avoided. In turn, Ethan found himself genuinely interested in Claire's world, so different from his own with its corporate politics and family legacy expectations. She was brilliant at her job despite the whispers about nepotism that followed her. She fought twice as hard to prove herself because of her last name, not in spite of it. Their coffee meetings became longer, more frequent. Sometimes they'd walk after Claire testing her healing leg through Golden Gate Park or along the Embarcadero. They developed the comfortable shorthand of friends, inside jokes, favorite spots, the ability to pick up conversations where they'd left off days before. 4 weeks after their reunion at the mill, Claire asked about Noah. You talk about him all the time, but I feel like I know this little person I've never met. Would it be okay if I met him sometime? The question caught Ethan off guard. His friendship with Claire had existed in a separate compartment from his life with Noah. The idea of those worlds overlapping made him both nervous and curious. I'd like that. Noah's been asking about you too. The mysterious coffee friend who keeps stealing his dad on Saturday mornings. They arranged to meet at Dolores Park that weekend. Noah was uncharacteristically quiet on the walkover, clutching Astro 7 in one hand and Ethan's fingers in the other. What if she doesn't like robots? Noah finally asked as they approached the park. Everyone likes robots, buddy. Besides, Claire is smart. She'll recognize how advanced Astro 7 is. But what if she doesn't like me? The real question emerged small and vulnerable. Ethan stopped walking, crouching down to Noah's level. That's impossible. You're the most likable person I know. But even if that somehow happened, which it won't, it wouldn't change anything between you and me. Okay. Noah nodded, but his grip on both the robot and Ethan's hand tightened. Claire was already at the park, sitting on a bench near the playground. She waved when she spotted them, her smile wide and genuine. Ethan felt Noah tense beside him. Claire stood as they approached, leaning slightly on her cane. She wore jeans and a casual sweater instead of her usual business attire, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. You must be Noah. She smiled, her eyes warm. Your dad has told me so much about you. Is that Astro 7? I've heard he's quite the advanced model. Noah's eyes widened. You know about Astro 7? Claire nodded seriously. Your dad mentioned he helps with structural braces and joint reinforcement. Very impressive engineering. Noah's entire demeanor changed. He held up the robot proudly. I designed him myself. Dad helps with the hard parts. That's exactly how the best engineering teams work. Claire's voice was sincere without the condescension adults often use with children. My father and I restored an old motorcycle together when I was about your age. He did the engine work, but I designed the new paint job and helped rewire the headlight. You fixed a real motorcycle. Noah was clearly reassessing. Claire, his initial wariness giving way to interest. We did. It took almost a year working weekends. Claire smiled at the memory. Sometimes the hardest projects are the most worthwhile, like Astro 8, Noah said thoughtfully. I've been designing him, but the schematics are complicated. Maybe I could see these schematics sometime, Claire suggested. I'm not an engineer like your dad, but I've picked up a few things. Noah considered this offer with serious deliberation. Then decisively, do you want to see the playground? They have a really good rocket ship slide. I would love that. Lead the way. Ethan watched as his son took Claire's free hand, the one not holding her cane, and pulled her toward the playground, already chattering about his rocket ship design improvements. Something tight in his chest loosened at the sight. The afternoon unfolded with unexpected ease. Noah showed Claire every feature of the playground, offering running commentary on the engineering flaws and potential improvements. Claire listened with genuine interest, asking questions that delighted Noah with their seriousness. They built a sand fortress together while Ethan watched, struck by how naturally they interacted, as if they'd known each other much longer than an afternoon. Later, as Noah raced to the swings with another child he'd befriended, Claire turned to Ethan. He's incredible. Smart, thoughtful, creative. You've done an amazing job with him. Thanks. I can't take all the credit. She laid the foundation. I'm just trying to build on it. Claire's eyes were kind. She must have been remarkable. She was. Ethan felt the familiar ache duller now than it once had been. Some days I see so much of her in him that it's startling. Other days I see parts of him that are entirely his own, and I wonder what Sarah would think of this person he's becoming. I think she'd be proud, Claire said softly, of both of you. They sat in comfortable silence, watching Noah pump his legs on the swing, his face tilted toward the sky with pure joy. After a moment, Noah called out, Dad, watch how high I can go. Ethan raised a hand in acknowledgement. Be careful, buddy. What happened to your forehead? Noah's attention had shifted to Claire, his eyes fixed on the faint scar at her hairline, a souvenir from the earthquake. Claire touched the mark self-consciously. I was hurt during the earthquake a few weeks ago. A piece of building fell. Noah's swing slowed as he considered this. Were you scared? Very scared, Claire admitted, until your dad found me. He helped me until the ambulance came. He's quite the hero, your dad. Noah's eyes widened, shifting from Claire to Ethan and back again. You're the lady from the earthquake, the one Dad helped, instead of going to his interview. Ethan felt a jolt of surprise. He'd never told Noah those details had kept the story vague and focused on the evacuation. Claire looked equally startled. You know about the interview, Noah nodded solemnly. I heard Dad talking to Mrs. Johnson next door. He missed a really important meeting to help someone hurt in the alley. That was you. That was me, Claire confirmed, her voice soft. Your dad saved my life. Noah's face transformed with understanding and something like pride. That's why we still have pizza Fridays even though Dad didn't get the new job. Because helping people is more important than money. Ethan felt something catch in his throat. The simplicity of his son's understanding, the clarity of values he hoped he was instilling. Exactly right. Claire smiled at Noah, then at Ethan. Some things are worth more than any job. Noah seemed satisfied with this confirmation of his worldview. He pumped his legs harder, sending the swing soaring. Claire, watch this. I can go higher than anyone. The afternoon stretched on the three of them, moving from the playground to ice cream, then walking back toward Ethan and Noah's apartment as the sun began to set. Noah had overcome his initial shyness completely, now holding Claire's hand and chattering about his school's science fair project, a solar-powered robot that could sort recycling. At their apartment building, Claire knelt despite her injured leg to say goodbye to Noah at eye level. It was wonderful meeting you, Noah. Thank you for showing me the rocket slide and sharing your ice cream when mine started melting too fast. Noah beamed at her. Are you coming to Pizza Friday? Claire glanced at Ethan, uncertain. The question hung between them, an invitation to step further into their lives, to cross from casual friendship into something more integrated. Ethan found himself nodding before he'd fully processed the implications. If Claire wants to, she's welcome. I'd like that very much. Claire smiled, the expression reaching her eyes. Thank you for including me. Noah nodded decisively as if an important matter had been settled. See you Friday. Then he darted up the steps, eager to get Astro 7 home safely. Left alone on the sidewalk, Ethan and Claire stood in a moment of awkward awareness. Something had shifted, that afternoon, boundaries redrawn. He's extraordinary, Ethan. Claire broke the silence first. Truly, he likes you, Ethan said simply. He doesn't warm up to people easily, not since Sarah died. Claire met his eyes directly. I like him too, very much. And I like his dad, also very much. The words hung between them, honest and a little vulnerable. Ethan felt something flutter in his chest, possibility, fear, hope, all tangled together. I like you too, Claire Montgomery, more than I expected to. She smiled, something soft and private. I should go, but I'll see you Friday. Ethan nodded. Pizza night. Noah takes it very seriously. Be prepared for debates about toppings. I'll come ready to negotiate. She touched his arm briefly, then turned to go, her cane tapping lightly on the sidewalk. Ethan watched her walk away, feeling like something important had just happened, though he couldn't quite name what it was. Inside, he found Noah already in the living room, deep in conversation with Astro 7 about the day's adventures. She's nice, Dad, Noah announced without looking up. And she knows about robots. She is nice. Ethan agreed, wondering at the simple way children cut through complexity to essential truths. And she does know about robots. Later that night, after Noah was asleep, Ethan sat at the kitchen table with the usual stack of bills. The mortgage notice seemed to glow ominously in the dim light. 42 days now. He'd called the bank that morning, explored options for loan modification, but his debt-to-income ratio was too high for them to offer meaningful help. Yet despite the financial pressure, despite the uncertainty about where they might be living in 2 months, Ethan felt a strange sense of peace. Today had been good. Watching Noah and Claire together, seeing his son's easy acceptance of her, feeling the quiet possibility growing between them all. Whatever happened with the house, with his job, they would find a way forward. They always did. His phone buzzed with a text from Claire. Thank you for today. Noah is a gift. Sleep well. Ethan smiled at the simple message. He typed back, "Thank you for making him feel special. He couldn't stop talking about you after you left." Three dots appeared then. "The feeling is mutual. See you Friday. Sweet dreams, Ethan." He set the phone down, still smiling. Sweet dreams indeed. Friday arrived with Noah in a state of barely contained excitement. He'd spent the week mentioning Claire at random intervals. "Do you think Claire likes pepperoni? And should I show Claire my school project? And does Claire have any kids?" Each question revealing his growing attachment to this new person in their lives. Ethan had answered patiently, navigating his own mix of emotions about Claire's increasing presence. There was guilt. Was it disloyal to Sarah to feel this pull towards someone else? There was fear. What if this friendship evolved and then fell apart, hurting Noah in the process? And beneath it all, there was a current of anticipation he hadn't felt in years. The simple pleasure of looking forward to seeing someone. Claire arrived at 6 bearing a small gift for Noah. A book about robots throughout history. Noah's delight was immediate and vocal, showing Claire his favorite pages as Ethan ordered the pizza. The evening flowed with surprising ease, the three of them finding a rhythm together that felt both novel and somehow familiar. As they ate, Noah peppered Claire with questions about her job, her favorite robots, whether she'd ever built anything. Claire answered each query with thoughtful attention, never dismissing or deflecting. "My dad is really good at fixing things," Noah announced between bites of pizza. "He can fix anything. Cars, robots, the sink when it leaks. One time our refrigerator made a weird noise and he took the whole back off and fixed it with parts from the hardware store." Ethan felt a flush of pride at his son's assessment, though he tried to downplay it. "Basic mechanical skills, that's all." Claire shook her head. "Don't minimize it. Being able to understand how things work and how to fix them when they break, that's a real gift. My father always said the most valuable people in any organization are the ones who can solve problems others don't even understand." There was warmth in her words, genuine admiration that made Ethan see his practical skills through new eyes. Not just making do with what he had, but a genuine talent worth recognizing. After dinner, Noah insisted on showing Claire his room. The space posters on the walls, the bookshelf filled with science books, the workbench in the corner where he built his robots. Ethan followed, leaning against the doorframe as Noah proudly displayed his collection of robot parts. Motors salvaged from old toys, circuit boards Ethan had brought home from work, gears and wheels carefully organized in plastic bins. Claire knelt beside Noah as he showed her his latest creation, the beginnings of Astro 8, more ambitious than his previous model. She asked questions that delighted him with their specificity, clearly paying attention to details most adults would miss. "It needs better balance, though." Noah frowned at his design. "The weight distribution is wrong." "What if you adjusted the center of gravity?" Claire suggested. "Maybe move the battery pack more centrally." Noah's eyes lit up. "That could work, Dad. Can we try that tomorrow, buddy?" Ethan glanced at his watch. "It's almost bedtime." Noah's face fell, but he didn't argue. "Okay. Claire, will you come back to see Astro 8 when he's finished? I wouldn't miss it." Claire promised. "We engineers have to stick together." After Noah was tucked in, Ethan and Claire sat in the small living room with glasses of wine. The apartment felt different with her in it. Warmer somehow, the shabby furniture and worn carpet less noticeable. "He's amazing, Ethan." Claire's voice was soft. "The way his mind works, how he sees the world. He's going to do incredible things someday. That's the hope. If I can figure out how to give him the opportunities he deserves." Ethan's thoughts drifted to the mortgage notice, the deadline drawing closer each day. Claire seemed to sense the shift in his mood. "Is everything okay?" Ethan hesitated. He'd kept his financial struggles private, a weight he carried alone. But something about Claire's presence, her genuine interest in their lives, made him want to be honest. "We're facing some challenges. The house, I'm behind on the mortgage. Medical bills from when Sarah was sick. It's been manageable barely, but now the bank is threatening foreclosure. 40 days left to catch up." Claire's expression shifted to concern. "I had no idea. Is there anything I can do?" "No." Ethan's response was immediate, perhaps too sharp. "I didn't tell you for help. Just explaining some things." Claire nodded, respecting the boundary. "What will you do?" "Keep looking for solutions. Maybe sell some things, pick up weekend work. Worst case, we find a smaller apartment across town. He tried to sound matter-of-fact, though the thought of uprooting Noah from the only home he remembered clearly was painful. Claire was quiet for a moment, studying him. Then she set down her wine glass and leaned forward. Ethan, I've been looking through some of your projects, the designs you showed me last week. They're remarkable. The efficiency improvements you developed for your current company, the sustainability innovations. They show real vision. Thank you, but I'm not sure how that helps with the mortgage. Claire continued as if he hadn't spoken. Have you ever considered consulting work independent projects rather than full-time employment? With your expertise in mechanical engineering and process improvement, you could offer specialized services to multiple companies. The idea wasn't entirely new. Ethan had daydreamed about starting his own firm someday, being his own boss, choosing projects that excited him. But it had always seemed like a distant possibility, something for someday when they were more financially stable. I've thought about it, but starting a business takes capital, connections, time to build a client base. I can't risk Noah's stability on something that might take years to become profitable. Claire's eyes lit with intensity. What if you had connections already? What if I could introduce you to companies that need exactly your expertise? Ethan felt a flicker of wariness. This felt too close to charity, to being given opportunities out of obligation rather than merit. Claire, I appreciate the thought, but I can't accept special treatment because of our friendship. I meant what I said that first day at the mill. Claire shook her head, frustration evident. This isn't charity, Ethan. This is recognizing talent and connecting it to opportunity. My job is literally to identify the right people for the right roles. I'm good at it. Your skills are being wasted at precision. You know it, I know it. Why not let me make some introductions? Because Ethan paused, trying to articulate the complex tangle of pride, fear, and principle that made him hesitate. Because I need to know that whatever success I have, I earned it. For myself, for Noah. Not because someone felt they owed me. Claire's expression softened. What if it's not about owing? What if it's about seeing potential and wanting to help it flourish? Isn't that what you do for Noah every day? Create opportunities for his talents to grow. The comparison struck Ethan silent. He'd never thought of it that way. Just think about it. Claire gathered her purse, preparing to leave. No pressure, no obligation. But don't dismiss possibilities because of pride, Ethan. Noah deserves to see his father's talents recognized just as much as you want to see his flourish. She left him with those words echoing in his mind, challenging assumptions he'd held firmly for years. The apartment felt emptier after her departure, the silence heavier. Ethan moved through his nightly routine on autopilot, checking locks, turning off lights, looking in on Noah one last time. His son slept peacefully. Astro 7 clutched in one hand the new robot book from Claire open beside him. In sleep, Noah looked so much like Sarah, the same curve to his cheek, the same dark eyelashes against skin. What would Sarah think of Claire? Of this opportunity? Of his hesitation? He could almost hear her voice, practical and loving. Pride doesn't keep a roof over your heads, Eth. And accepting help isn't the same as being helpless. Ethan sat at the kitchen table long after he should have been sleeping, turning over possibilities in his mind. Starting his own consulting business had always been a someday dream. Maybe someday had arrived in an unexpected form, wrapped in an earthquake, in a chance meeting, in a woman who saw value in his skills when he'd started to doubt them himself. By morning, he'd made his decision. He texted Claire over coffee. I'd like to hear more about those connections, not for charity, for Noah, for myself, because maybe you're right about potential. Her response came quickly. For potential, lunch today, I know some people you should meet. And so began the next chapter, unexpected and unplanned. A path that opened from the rubble of an earthquake and led somewhere he couldn't yet see, but somehow felt right to follow. After texting Claire with his decision, Ethan's life transformed with dizzying speed. He spent that evening researching business registration requirements, legal structures, and insurance needs for engineering consultants. By morning, his kitchen table was covered with notes, his laptop battery depleted from hours of research. Noah found him there, still in yesterday's clothes, eyes red-rimmed but bright with purpose. Dad, did you sleep? Noah's small hand touched Ethan's shoulder, concern in his young voice. Ethan blinked, reality rushing back. Not much, buddy. I'm starting our own company. Walker Engineering Solutions. Noah's eyes widen. A real company? With an office and everything, eventually. Ethan stretched muscles protesting. But first we need clients, and before that we need to register the business. It's going to be a lot of work. Is it because of the lady from the earthquake? Claire Noah's perceptions sometimes caught Ethan off guard. Partly. She believes in what I can do. Ethan kept his explanation simple. And I think she's right. I've been fixing other people's problems for years. Maybe it's time to do it on my own terms. Noah nodded solemnly, processing this shift in their world. Can I help? I could be the robot division. Ethan laughed, ruffling his son's already disheveled hair. Absolutely. The robot division is all yours. Now how about breakfast before school? Over the next 2 weeks, Walker Engineering Solutions took shape. Ethan filed the necessary paperwork, opened a business bank account, and created business cards with a simple geometric logo. Each night after Noah's bedtime, he refined his portfolio website, showcasing projects he'd led at Precision Engineering, emphasizing the efficiency improvements and cost savings he'd achieved. Claire proved to be more than just a source of potential contacts. She became a sounding board, reviewing his business plan with the sharp insight of someone who'd grown up watching her father build Montgomery Corporation. Her suggestions were practical, specific, and delivered with a confidence that bolstered Ethan's own. You've undersold yourself on your consultation rates, she pointed out during an evening strategy session, Noah already asleep. The going rate for someone with your expertise is at least 30% higher. Ethan hesitated. I want to be competitive. Get my foot in the door. Claire's gaze was steady. There's competitive, and then there's undervaluing your worth. Companies don't respect consultants who charge too little. They assume the quality matches the price. The observation challenged Ethan's instinct to play it safe. Maybe you're right. It's just, I've never had to put a dollar value on my own abilities before. Claire's smile softened. That's the hardest part of striking out on your own. But remember, you're not just selling your time. You're selling years of experience, problem-solving skills, and the ability to see solutions others miss. When the first meeting with Evergreen Manufacturing was scheduled, Ethan's confidence wavered despite Claire's assurances. The night before, he stood before the bathroom mirror, adjusting a new tie that replaced the one lost in the earthquake. His reflection revealed the strain of the past weeks. The late nights building his business while maintaining normalcy for Noah, the weight of responsibility pressing heavier now that he'd left the security of regular employment. His phone buzzed with a text from Claire. Remember, they need your expertise more than you need their contract. You've got this. Ethan smiled at her uncanny ability to sense his moments of doubt. In the few short weeks since their reunion at the mill, Claire had become integral to his life in ways he couldn't have anticipated. Their daily texts and frequent evening conversations had created a foundation of trust and understanding that felt both new and somehow familiar. Evergreen Manufacturing occupied a sprawling facility in South San Francisco, producing commercial kitchen equipment for restaurants nationwide. Production manager Rita Garcia met Ethan in the lobby, a no-nonsense woman whose handshake conveyed both strength and evaluation. We've had efficiency issues for almost a year, she explained, leading him through the facility. Production down 15% despite adding weekend shifts. Ethan listened, observed, and asked targeted questions as they walked. Within 30 minutes, his trained eye had identified 3 likely problems: an inconsistently operating conveyor motor, poorly arranged workstations causing unnecessary movement, and a quality control bottleneck. In the conference room afterward, Rita studied him with new interest. You see it, don't you, the production issues? 3 distinct problems, Ethan confirmed, sketching quick diagrams as he explained his observations. The conveyor motor's variable speeds are creating downstream timing issues. Your QC station layout forces operators to physically turn around for each inspection, adding seconds that multiply across hundreds of units. And the workstation configuration adds approximately 12 unnecessary steps per production cycle. Rita's eyebrows rose. We've had 2 consultants through here already. Neither pinpointed these issues. I've been solving these kinds of problems for 8 years. They follow patterns once you know what to look for. We need a formal proposal. Rita's decision was clearly made. Detailed analysis, recommended solutions, timeline, and costs. How quickly can you provide that? Ethan calculated mentally. Additional measurements needed solution development materials and labor pricing. 3 days. Perfect. Rita's handshake sealed their verbal agreement. Welcome to Evergreen, Mr. Walker. Assuming your proposal isn't outrageous, I think we have a deal. In his car afterward, Ethan called Claire, adrenaline making his voice unsteady. They want a proposal. They actually want a proposal. Claire's laugh bubbled through the phone. Of course they do. You're exactly what they need. What did I tell you? The Evergreen proposal consumed Ethan's next 3 days. He returned twice for additional measurements and timing studies, photographing layouts and process flows. Each night after Noah slept, Ethan worked until exhaustion forced him to stop detailing issues and designing solutions that would increase efficiency with minimal disruption to current operations. When he delivered the final proposal, Rita reviewed it immediately, asking pointed questions that Ethan answered with growing confidence. At the end, she nodded once and slid a contract across the table. We'd like you to start immediately. Just like that, Walker Engineering Solutions had its first client. The contract wasn't enormous, a 3-month project with clear deliverables, but it was legitimate, and more importantly, it was his. That evening, Ethan and Noah celebrated with pizza on a Wednesday, breaking their Friday tradition in honor of the special occasion. Noah studied Ethan across the pizza box, eyes serious despite the celebration. Does this mean you won't be working at your old job anymore? That's right, buddy. I'll be working for our own company now. For different clients, solving different problems. Noah considered this, clearly processing the implications. Will you be home more or less? The question struck Ethan's heart. It was the consideration that had kept him awake many nights. How to balance building a business with being present for Noah. Different, not less. Some days I'll need to be at client sites. Other days I can work from home. But I promise you're still my priority. Always. Noah nodded, accepting this assurance with a child's trust. Can I help with the robot company? Ethan smiled at the misunderstanding. It's an engineering company, not specifically robots. But yes, I could definitely use an assistant engineer for certain projects. Noah beamed pride, straightening his small shoulders. I can be in charge of the robot division when we expand. Definitely. When we expand. Ethan ruffled his son's hair, grateful for his ability to see possibilities rather than obstacles. The next morning, Ethan submitted his resignation to Precision Engineering. His supervisor received the news with a mixture of regret and understanding. You've been underutilized here for years, Ethan. We'll miss you, but this is the right move. As he cleared out 8 years of accumulated files and personal items, Ethan experienced a bittersweet melancholy. Precision had been his safe harbor after Sarah's death. Predictable work that allowed him to focus on Noah while grief consumed his remaining energy. But safety had gradually become stagnation. The earthquake meeting, Claire starting his own business, these disruptions had awakened something dormant in him, a hunger for challenge he'd forgotten he possessed. Claire celebrated his new beginning by helping transform their spare bedroom into a temporary office. She arrived on a Saturday morning with office supplies, a second-hand drafting table found at a university surplus sale, and an ergonomic chair she claimed was gathering dust in Montgomery Corporation's storage. You shouldn't be spending your money on my business, Ethan protested as they assembled the desk. Claire rolled her eyes. First, it's barely any money. Second, I'm investing in a promising startup. Third, and most importantly, I want to. The ease with which she integrated herself into their lives continued to surprise Ethan. She had an innate understanding of boundaries, never pushing too far or too fast, creating her own relationship with Noah rather than trying to fill Sarah's absence. Noah responded with growing attachment, looking forward to Claire's visits and including her in his elaborate robot engineering plans. By the 3rd week of the Evergreen project, Walker Engineering Solutions had established a productive rhythm. Ethan spent mornings at the manufacturing facility, afternoons analyzing data and developing solutions, and made sure to pick Noah up from school personally each day. Evenings were reserved for family time, with work resuming only after Noah's bedtime. This careful balance faced its first major test the morning of Noah's school science fair. Ethan had blocked the entire morning in his schedule, helping Noah practice his presentation over breakfast. His son wore his special Future Engineer t-shirt, nervously explaining how his solar-powered sorting robot worked. The science fair starts at 9, but my presentation is at 10, Noah reminded him. You'll be there, right? Wouldn't miss it for anything, buddy. Ethan promised helping Noah load his project into a protective box. At 7:15, Ethan's phone rang. Rita Garcia from Evergreen, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. The conveyor system had failed completely overnight. Production was at a standstill, costing the company thousands of dollars each hour. "We need you here immediately." Her tone left no room for negotiation. Ethan glanced at Noah, now carefully arranging his project components for transport. The presentation wasn't until 10 hours. If he left immediately, he might be able to get Evergreen running again and still make it back in time. "I'll be there in 30 minutes, he assured Rita, then knelt beside Noah. "Buddy, there's an emergency at Evergreen. Their machines stopped working and I need to go fix them. But I'll be back in time for your presentation, I promise." Noah's face fell slightly, but he nodded with the resilience of a child accustomed to the compromises of having a working parent. "It's okay, Dad. They need you to fix their robots. Not robots, but close enough." Ethan pressed a kiss to his forehead. "Mrs. Johnson will walk you to school. I'll meet you in the gymnasium at 10. The situation at Evergreen was worse than described. Not just mechanical failure, but a complete system shutdown following an overnight power surge. Ethan worked frantically, bypassing damaged components and rewiring essential connections. At 9:30, he was elbow deep in the control panel when Rita appeared at his shoulder. How much longer? Ethan wiped sweat from his forehead, leaving a smudge of grease. 2 hours minimum. I need to rebuild this entire control sequence. Rita's expression hardened. We can't wait that long. We need partial production running now. Ethan checked his watch, 9:35. Noah would be setting up his display, arranging his robot, just so practicing his explanation. The gymnasium would be filling with parents and teachers. And Ethan was 20 minutes away, covered in grease, with hours of work ahead. His phone vibrated with a text. From Claire. "Where are you? Noah's looking for you." Ethan's stomach dropped. He'd promised Noah. After so many accommodations to the demands of work, this was supposed to be different. His own business was supposed to mean more control, not less. Rita waited for an answer, production workers standing idle behind her, the cost of downtime ticking upward with each passing minute. This was the moment, the impossible choice between professional obligation and personal promise, between a client who could determine his fledgling business's survival and the son who was the reason for everything. Ethan made his decision. I need 2 hours to fix it properly, but I can get you partial production in 30 minutes, enough to run the basic line while I attend my son's school event. Then I'll come back and complete the repairs. Rita's face registered surprise, then a calculation. 30 minutes for partial capacity. Can you guarantee that? Yes. Ethan was already turning back to the control panel, fingers moving with new urgency. I guarantee it. 28 minutes later, the conveyor lurched to life, running at reduced speed but functional. Ethan closed the control panel, hands still stained with grease despite his attempts to clean them. I'll be back in 90 minutes to finish the job, he told Rita, already backing toward the door. What I've done is a temporary bypass that will hold until then. Rita nodded, professional respect in her eyes. The science fair. Go. We'll manage. Ethan raced to his car, checking his watch. 10:15. He was already late. The drive to Noah's school took 12 frantic minutes. He sprinted to the gymnasium, still in his work clothes, grease stains visible on his cuffs. Inside, the space buzzed with activity. Proud parents moving between displays, teachers judging, projects, excited children explaining their work. Ethan scanned the rows of tables looking for Noah. He found his son's display. The solar-powered robot perfectly arranged, the poster board neatly labeled in Noah's careful handwriting. But no Noah. Panic surged until he spotted them across the gymnasium. Noah and Claire, heads bent together beside someone else's volcano display. Claire's hand rested lightly on Noah's shoulder as he explained something to her, his expression animated despite Ethan's absence. Ethan moved toward them, relief and guilt competing in his chest. Noah spotted him when he was halfway across the gym, his face lighting up with surprised delight. Dad, you made it. Noah launched himself forward, colliding with Ethan's legs in a fierce hug. Claire said you got stuck fixing an emergency, but you came anyway. Ethan knelt, embracing his son properly, not caring about the grease stains that might transfer to Noah's special t-shirt. I promised, didn't I? I'm sorry I'm late. Had to get a factory running again. Claire approached more slowly, her expression a mixture of relief and something harder to interpret. Noah's project is amazing, Ethan. The solar calibration system he designed is genuinely innovative. I've been waiting to show you. Yeah, Noah tugged Ethan's hand, pulling him toward their display. The judges already came by, but I can show you how it works. The next 45 minutes passed in a blur of proud fatherhood as Noah demonstrated his project, explained his methodology, and introduced Ethan to his science teacher. Throughout it all, Claire stayed nearby, occasionally adding a comment or asking Noah a question that let him elaborate on technical aspects he was particularly proud of. When the awards were announced and Noah received honorable mention for innovation, his face glowed with pride as he looked to both Ethan and Claire for approval. It wasn't until they were walking Noah back to his classroom that Ethan had a moment alone with Claire. "How did you know?" he asked quietly, watching Noah skip ahead of them down the hallway. Claire's expression was carefully neutral. "I called Mrs. Johnson this morning to arrange dropping off a book for Noah. She mentioned you had had an emergency at Evergreen. I thought Noah might need some support just in case." The implication hung in the air. In case Ethan didn't make it, in case work took precedence, and in case Noah faced disappointment alone. The fact that she'd anticipated this possibility, had stepped in without being asked, created a complicated tangle of emotions in Ethan's chest. Gratitude, defensiveness, and something deeper he wasn't ready to name. "Thank you for being there for him." The words felt inadequate. Claire's eyes met his, direct and unflinching. "I didn't do it for you, Ethan. I did it for Noah. He's a remarkable child who deserves to have people show up for him." The gentle rebuke stung precisely because it echoed Ethan's own self-criticism. He had shown up but late, distracted, still half-focused on the problem, waiting at Evergreen. Claire had been fully present from the start. "I know. I'm trying to figure out how to balance everything. The new business, being a good father, making ends meet. Sometimes it feels like I'm failing at all three simultaneously." Claire's expression softened. "You're not failing, Ethan. You're human, and you're doing this alone, which makes it 3 times harder. Maybe it's time to consider that accepting help doesn't make you less of a father. It might make you a better one." Before Ethan could respond, they reached Noah's classroom. His son turned, beaming at both of them. "Are you coming back to see me after school?" This directed at Claire with the unself-conscious directness of childhood. Claire glanced at Ethan, seeking permission or guidance. He nodded slightly, surprising himself with how much he wanted her to say yes. "I'd love to." Claire smiled at Noah. "But your dad might need to finish his emergency repair work." Noah considered this complication. "Maybe you could come to our house after. We could work on Astro 8 while Dad fixes the factory." The casual inclusion of Claire in their evening plans, the easy assumption that she belonged in their home even when Ethan was absent, it marked a shift Ethan hadn't fully registered until this moment. Claire had become part of their lives, not just his. The realization was both warming and terrifying. Claire looked to Ethan again, leaving the decision to him. The right answer emerged with surprising clarity. "That sounds perfect. I need to finish at Evergreen, but I shouldn't be more than a couple hours. You two can get started on Astro 8, and I'll join when I'm done." Noah's face lit up with delight at this arrangement. "Yes, Claire, you can help me with the balance problem we talked about." As they said goodbye to Noah and walked back toward the parking lot, a new understanding hummed between them. Something had shifted, boundaries redrawn without explicit discussion. "I'll pick up dinner on my way to your place," Claire said as they reached her car. "Any request?" The domesticity of the question, its comfortable assumption of shared space and time, caught Ethan off guard. For a moment, he could almost imagine a different life, one where such arrangements were routine rather than exception, where Claire's presence was a constant rather than an occasional gift. "Noah will want pizza to celebrate his honorable mention." Claire laughed. "It's not Friday. Special occasions warrant schedule adjustments." This was Noah's rule, established early in their Pizza Friday tradition. "Pizza it is, then." Claire's smile held a warmth that lingered as she drove away. At Evergreen, Ethan finished the repairs with focused efficiency, his mind split between the technical problem before him and the evolving situation at home. By the time he arrived at his apartment, it was after 6. The scene that greeted him when he opened the door stopped him in the threshold. Claire and Noah sat cross-legged on the living room floor, surrounded by robot parts pizza box open beside them. Astro 8 stood partially assembled between them, already more sophisticated than any of Noah's previous creations. But it wasn't the robot that made Ethan's breath catch. It was the tableau they created, heads bent together in concentration, completely absorbed in their shared project. Noah looked up first, face brightening. "Dad, look what we figured out. Claire showed me how to distribute the weight better using counterbalances." Claire's greeting was warmer but more reserved, a question in her eyes as she registered Ethan's expression. "We saved you pizza. The supreme, your favorite." The moment crystallized something Ethan had been feeling for weeks, a recognition of possibility of a future he hadn't allowed himself to imagine since Sarah died. The glimpse of a family reformed, different but whole. The evening unfolded with a comfortable rhythm, the three of them working together on Astro 8, sharing pizza, laughing at Noah's increasingly elaborate plans for the robot's capabilities. When Noah's bedtime arrived, he asked Claire to read his story, another small indication of her integration into their lives. After Noah was asleep, Ethan and Claire sat on the small balcony outside the living room, the night air cool against their skin, the city lights creating a backdrop of scattered stars below the actual stars hidden by urban glow. "Thank you for today." Ethan's voice was quiet in the darkness. "For being there for Noah when I couldn't be. For understanding that I had to try to do both, fix the factory and make his science fair." Claire was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her words were careful, measured. "Ethan, I need to say something, and I need you to really hear it. Not as a criticism, but as an observation from someone who cares about both you and Noah." The seriousness in her tone made him tense, preparing for judgment he probably deserved. "Go ahead. You're trying to do everything alone, and it's not sustainable. Not for your business, not for Noah, and not for you." Claire's eyes found his in the dim light. "Accepting help doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're human. And Noah doesn't need a superhero father who's stretched so thin he's barely present. He needs a father who knows when to ask for support." The words struck with precision, finding vulnerabilities Ethan had carefully protected. The instinct to defend himself rose instantly, to explain that he'd managed for over 4 years on his own, that Sarah's death had left him no choice but to be everything for Noah. Instead, he took a breath and really considered what Claire was saying. The memory of walking into the gymnasium, finding Noah with Claire instead of alone and disappointed, surfaced with new clarity. His son hadn't been diminished by Claire's presence in that moment. He'd been supported by it. "I've been trying to fill 2 roles since Sarah died," Ethan admitted. "To be both parents. And I've been so afraid of failing that I've resisted anything that feels like I'm not doing it all myself." Claire's hand found his in the darkness, warm and steady. "That's understandable. But maybe the strongest thing you can do for Noah isn't handling everything alone. Maybe it's showing him that it's okay to need people to build connections, to create a community around yourself." The idea settled into Ethan's consciousness, challenging years of self-reliance. Was his determination to handle everything alone really about Noah's well-being? Or was it about his own fear? Fear of dependence, of vulnerability, of opening spaces in their lives that made Sarah's absence more apparent. "You've become important to him." To us, Ethan's voice was rough with emotion. "I didn't expect that." Claire's fingers tightened around his. "I didn't expect any of this. When I went looking for the man who saved me in that alley, I thought I'd say thank you and move on. I never imagined this. This." The word encompassed so much. Their friendship, Claire's growing role in Noah's life, the undercurrent of attraction between them, that neither had directly addressed the potential future taking shape in these shared moments. "Where is this going, Claire?" Ethan asked the question that had been circling his thoughts for weeks. "Between us, I mean." Claire didn't pretend to misunderstand. "I don't know," she answered honestly. "I know I care about you, about Noah. I know I think about you both when we're not together. I know I want to be part of your lives in whatever way makes sense." The simplicity of her answer, its lack of pressure or expectation, eased something tight in Ethan's chest. He was still learning who he was outside the roles of widower and single father, still discovering what he wanted beyond survival and stability for Noah. Claire seemed to understand this, to offer connection without demanding definition. "I care about you too." Ethan's admission felt like stepping onto uncertain ground. "It's been a long time since I've felt this way about anyone. Since Sarah. And I'm not always sure what to do with it." Claire shifted closer, her shoulder pressing lightly against his, offering contact without expectation. We don't have to figure it all out tonight, or even next week. We can just see where it goes. No pressure, no timelines. The permission to move slowly to honor his own process of healing and opening felt like a gift. Ethan turned to look at her profile in the dim light, the curve of her cheek, the slight upturn of her nose, the scar at her hairline from the earthquake that had brought them together. Claire must have felt his gaze. She turned, their faces suddenly close, the moment charged with possibility. The decision to cross that final distance between them hung suspended in the night air. Ethan made his choice, leaning forward with deliberate intent. Their lips met softly, tentatively, a question rather than a declaration. Claire answered by returning the kiss with gentle pressure, her hand rising to rest against his cheek. The moment was brief but profound, not a passionate embrace, but something quieter, a beginning rather than a culmination. When they separated, Claire's eyes searched his, checking for regret or uncertainty. Ethan smiled, surprising himself with how right it felt. I've wanted to do that for weeks. Claire returned his smile, the expression illuminating her face even in the darkness. Me too, but I was waiting for you to be ready. The acknowledgement of his process, her patience with his hesitation, deepened Ethan's appreciation for this remarkable woman who had entered their lives through chance and remained by choice. The moment was interrupted by Ethan's phone buzzing in his pocket. An email notification from a potential new client, the sustainable energy startup Claire had mentioned in that first discussion about consulting. They wanted to meet to discuss their wind turbine prototype and the mechanical engineering challenges they faced. Ethan showed Claire the email, excitement building despite the late hour. This could be client number 2. Actually looks like an interesting project too. Claire read it quickly, professional interest engaging immediately. Grayson Renewables, they're doing innovative work. Small company, but growing fast. This would be a good connection for you. The seamless shift between personal intimacy and professional support exemplified what made their relationship unique. The ability to move between roles, to be both potential romantic partner and business ally without diminishing either aspect. Ethan slipped the phone back into his pocket, turning his attention back to Claire. This consulting thing might actually work. Of course it will work. Claire's confidence in him never wavered. You're solving real problems for real companies. That's always valuable. They stayed on the balcony, talking until midnight, making plans for Ethan's meeting with Grayson Renewables, discussing Noah's upcoming school projects, sharing stories from their lives before they'd met. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by comfortable silences and occasional moments of renewed physical connection. Fingers intertwined, shoulders touching, a brief kiss when Claire finally rose to leave. At the door, Claire paused, her expression turning serious again. I meant what I said earlier, Ethan, about accepting help. It doesn't diminish you as a father or as a man. Sometimes the strongest thing we can do is recognize we don't have to do everything alone. Ethan nodded, the truth of her words resonating more deeply now. I'm learning that. Slowly, but I'm learning. Good. She pressed a final kiss to his cheek. Because I'd like to be someone who helps, not just someone who visits occasionally. After she left, Ethan moved through the quiet apartment, checking on Noah one last time before bed. His son slept peacefully. Astro 8's partially completed form, keeping watch from the bedside table. The robot's improved balance system, Claire's contribution, was visible even in its unfinished state. Ethan touched the mechanism gently, recognizing the metaphor it presented. His own life had been unbalanced for so long, weighted too heavily toward responsibility and obligation, missing the counterbalances of connection and joy. Perhaps Claire was right. Perhaps the path forward wasn't about carrying everything alone, but about finding new supports, new balances, new ways of distributing the weight. With that thought comforting his mind, Ethan prepared for bed, anticipation for tomorrow's meeting with Grayson Renewables, mixing with the lingering warmth of Claire's kiss. For the first time in years, the future seemed to hold more promise than struggle, more possibility than limitation. It was a good feeling, unfamiliar, but welcome, like coming home to a place he'd forgotten existed. The Grayson Renewables meeting opened an unexpected door for Ethan's growing business. Operating from a converted warehouse in Oakland, the renewable energy startup embodied the scrappy innovation spirit Ethan admired. The interior blended engineering workstations with casual meeting spaces, 3D printers humming in one corner, while prototypes stood displayed throughout the open floor plan. Marcus Chen Grayson's founder and lead engineer greeted Ethan with the direct enthusiasm of someone too busy for pretense. A former MIT researcher in his early 30s, Marcus had the focused intensity of someone pursuing a vision rather than just a business opportunity. We've developed a vertical axis wind turbine that's 30% more efficient than anything on the market, Marcus explained, leading Ethan to a testing platform where a scaled prototype stood. But we're hitting a resonance problem at certain speeds. The blade pitch control system isn't stable enough for commercial deployment. The prototype rotated around a central axis curved blades designed to capture wind from any direction, fundamentally different from traditional propeller-style turbines. As Marcus activated the test system, Ethan observed the visible wobble that developed at specific rotation speeds. We've tried everything to dampen the vibration. Marcus continued, frustration evident. Nothing works consistently without sacrificing efficiency. Ethan circled the prototype, mentally breaking down the problem into components. What if the issue isn't dampening the vibration, but redistributing the forces causing it, like adding counterweights to specific points along the rotation path? Marcus's eyebrows rose. We tried counterweights, but the added mass reduced efficiency. A sudden inspiration struck Ethan. The balance problem Noah and Claire had solved with Astro 8 held surprising relevance. What if they weren't static counterweights? What if they shifted position dynamically based on rotation speed and wind direction? The concept was simple in principle, but potentially revolutionary for Grayson's design. Ethan sketched rapidly on the whiteboard, a system of sliding weights that would automatically adjust position along tracks embedded in the turbine frame, controlled by the same sensors monitoring wind conditions. Marcus studied the drawings with growing excitement. This could actually work. It's elegant, uses the forces causing the problem to solve the problem. By the end of the 4-hour meeting, Ethan had secured his second client. The Grayson contract was larger than Evergreen's, spanning 6 months of design prototyping and testing. More significantly, it included a royalty provision. If Ethan's dynamic counterbalance system became part of their commercial product, he would receive a percentage of each unit sold. That evening, Claire arrived with a bottle of champagne to celebrate her smile wide as Noah excitedly explained how his robot had inspired Dad's big solution. To Walker Engineering Solutions, Claire raised her glass of sparkling cider included in the toast for Noah's benefit. And to Astro 8 Unexpected Engineering Consultant. Noah beamed at being acknowledged, clinking his glass with exaggerated formality. To the robot division, the celebration marked more than just business success. As Noah demonstrated Astro 8's latest features, Ethan caught Claire watching them both, something soft and wondering in her expression. When their eyes met, a current of understanding passed between them. This shared joy, this moment of collective triumph, was becoming precious to them all. Later, after Noah was asleep, they sat close on the living room couch, the empty champagne bottle evidence of their continued celebration. Things are moving so fast, Ethan's voice held equal measures of wonder and concern. 2 clients within weeks of starting. The Evergreen project going well, Grayson excited about the dynamic counterbalance concept. It's everything I hoped for, but... Claire touched his hand. But it's a lot to manage on your own, Ethan nodded, grateful for her understanding. I need help, real help beyond just advice and introductions. Administrative support at minimum. Maybe another engineer eventually if things keep growing, but I can't afford to hire anyone yet. Claire's expression turned thoughtful. What about an intern? Someone from the engineering program at Berkeley. They need real-world experience and you need help. Could be perfect. The suggestion was practical, achievable, exactly the kind of solution Ethan needed, but hadn't seen while focused on immediate challenges. That's actually brilliant. Claire grinned. I do have my moments. Their laughter dissolved into comfortable silence, shoulders touching the evening, stretching lazy and warm around them. When Claire spoke again, her voice had shifted to something more personal, more vulnerable. I've been thinking about us, Ethan, about where this is going. The statement hung in the air, creating both anticipation and anxiety. In the 3 weeks since their first kiss, their relationship had evolved in small, careful steps. More frequent dinners together, occasional evenings alone after Noah's bedtime, increasing physical affection, but always with an unspoken boundary, a care not to rush what was building between them. "What have you been thinking?" Ethan's question was gentle, leaving space for whatever Claire needed to express. She shifted to face him directly. "I think I'm falling in love with you, and with Noah. And it terrifies me because I've never done this before. Become involved with someone who has a child. The responsibility of it, the potential to hurt not just one person but two, if things don't work out. The honesty of her admission, the way she placed Noah's well-being at the center of her concerns, rather than as an afterthought, confirmed for Ethan what he'd been feeling for weeks. Claire Montgomery wasn't just someone he was attracted to. She was someone he could trust with the most precious part of his life. "I'm falling in love with you too," Ethan took her hands in his. "And I understand the fear. When Sarah died, I swore I wouldn't bring someone into Noah's life unless I was absolutely certain they would stay, that I wouldn't let him experience another loss." Claire's eyes were steady on his. "I can't promise forever, Ethan. No one can. But I can promise that I take this seriously, what it means to be in both your lives. I won't make commitments I can't keep, especially to Noah." The maturity of her response, its lack of easy assurances, deepened Ethan's respect for her. They were navigating complex emotional terrain together, each step considered and intentional. "That's all I can ask," Ethan leaned forward, resting his forehead against hers. "That we're honest with each other and with Noah. That we move at a pace that feels right for all of us." Their kiss that night felt different. Not a tentative exploration, but a deliberate choice and acknowledgement of the path they were choosing together. The following weeks brought a new rhythm to their lives. Claire found Jack Chen, a brilliant Berkeley engineering student, to work as an intern for Walker Engineering Solutions. With Jack handling some of the daily implementation work at Evergreen, Ethan could focus on the more complex design challenges for Grayson, while still maintaining time for client relationships and, most importantly, for Noah. Claire's presence in their lives grew more consistent. She joined them for dinner most evenings, helped Noah with homework, and became a regular participant in weekend activities. Her relationship with Noah deepened through their shared work on Astro 8, to which they added a solar panel system Claire found at a makerspace auction. While Walker Engineering Solutions flourished, Ethan faced an unexpected challenge on the home front. The bank sent a notice offering a loan modification that might save their apartment, but only if Ethan could make a substantial down payment. With the Evergreen project nearly complete and the Grayson work proceeding well, it seemed financially possible if tight. The night Ethan received the bank's offer, he spread the documents across the kitchen table after Noah was asleep, calculating what they could afford. Claire found him there, surrounded by papers, expression intent. Good news or bad, she set a cup of tea beside him, peering at the documents. Ethan explained the situation, the possibility of keeping their home balanced against the financial risk of committing so much capital when the business was still new. Claire listened carefully, asking insightful questions about cash flow projections and contract timelines. "What does your gut tell you?" Claire's question cut through the numbers and calculations. Ethan sighed, finally articulating the concern beneath his hesitation. "This apartment is the last place Noah lived with Sarah. It's where we built our life since she died. Leaving feels like losing another piece of her." The admission revealed a truth Ethan hadn't fully acknowledged even to himself. Claire's expression softened with understanding. "That makes sense, Ethan. Places hold memories, connections to people we've lost." She touched his hand gently. "But have you considered that maybe Sarah isn't just in these walls? That she's in Noah's smile, in the values you're teaching him, in the memories you keep alive?" The perspective shift hit Ethan with unexpected force. He'd been clinging to physical spaces and objects, afraid that moving meant abandoning Sarah's memory. But Claire was right. What mattered most couldn't be lost with an address change. "You're right," Ethan squeezed her hand in gratitude. "Maybe instead of stretching ourselves financially to stay here, we should be looking at what would work better for us now, for the business, for Noah, for our future." The decision crystallized over the next few days. Rather than accept the loan modification, Ethan would let the apartment go and find a new place, something with more space for both Noah and the growing business. It was a practical choice, but also an emotional one, a step toward building a life that honored Sarah's memory while embracing new possibilities. Their apartment search led them to a small house with a converted garage that could serve as Ethan's office. Located in a quieter neighborhood, it offered something the apartment couldn't: a small backyard. When they toured it together, Noah immediately claimed the slightly larger bedroom, already planning where Astro 8's charging station would go. It has a yard. Noah pressed his face against the window, overlooking the small, neglected garden space. Mom always wanted a garden. She told me we'd grow flowers together someday. The simple statement caught Ethan off guard. Noah rarely spoke of specific memories with Sarah. He'd been too young when she died to retain many clear recollections. This one felt precious, a fragment Ethan hadn't known Noah preserved. She did love gardens, Ethan confirmed, throat tight. She used to take pictures of flowers wherever we went. Said she was collecting ideas for when we had our own place with a yard. Claire, who had been giving them space during this moment, approached slowly. Would you like to plant a garden here, Noah? If your dad decides on this house, Noah nodded solemnly. A memory garden. For Mom. The three of them stood together at the window, looking out at the small patch of earth that held such unexpected significance. In that moment, Ethan felt a shift. Not a lessening of Sarah's importance, but an expansion of their family circle to include Claire, to make space for new connections alongside enduring memories. We could plant roses? Ethan's voice was rough with emotion. Sarah loved roses, yellow ones especially. And sunflowers, Noah added. She had a sunflower dress, I remember. Claire's hand found Ethan, squeezing gently. Then that's what we'll do. Yellow roses and sunflowers to start. The decision was made. They would take the houseplant, the garden, begin this next phase together. The moving process unfolded over the following weeks. Sorting possessions, packing boxes, saying goodbye to the apartment that had sheltered them through grief and recovery. During the packing, Noah discovered an old photo album tucked in the back of Sarah's closet. One Ethan had put away soon after her death, when looking at the images had been too painful. They sat together on Noah's bedroom floor, dust motes dancing in the afternoon light, and opened it for the first time in years. The album chronicled their life before Noah was born and through his early childhood. Sarah and Ethan young and laughing on their first date, their wedding day. Sarah pregnant and glowing baby Noah cradled in his mother's arms. Each image was carefully labeled in Sarah's neat handwriting, dates and place preserved. She's so pretty. Noah traced his finger over a photo of Sarah holding him as a toddler, both of them grinning at the camera. I wish I remembered her better. Ethan's throat tightened. I wish you did too, buddy. But you know what? You have her smile, and her curiosity, and her kindness. You carry so much of her with you every day. Noah considered this, head tilted thoughtfully. Do you think she'd be happy about Claire, about us moving? The question cut to the heart of what Ethan had been feeling throughout this transition. He took a moment to find the right words, wanting to honor both Sarah's memory and their present reality. I do. Your mom wanted us to be happy, Noah. More than anything. She made me promise right at the end that we would live our lives fully, not just exist, but really live. Moving forward doesn't mean forgetting her. It means carrying her with us into new chapters. Noah nodded, wisdom beyond his years in his solemn expression, like planting her favorite flowers in our new garden. Exactly like that, Ethan pulled his son close, grateful for his remarkable heart. Claire found them there a little later, having arrived to help with more packing. She paused in the doorway, taking in the scene, father and son surrounded by photographs. Memories spread around them like fallen leaves. Ethan looked up, seeing the hesitation in her posture, the uncertainty about whether to enter this sacred space. He extended his hand in clear invitation. Come see Sarah's album. Claire joined them on the floor, accepting the boundary crossing for what it was. A significant inclusion, a deliberate integration of past and present. She looked at the photos Noah eagerly showed her, asking questions that helped him articulate memories and connections, creating bridges between what had been and what was becoming. She loved yellow roses. Claire smiled at a photo of Sarah in a garden bending to smell a bright bloom. We'll have to plant several varieties then. Maybe a climbing rose for the back fence. The way Claire honored Sarah's presence without competition or insecurity eased something in Ethan's heart. This wasn't replacement, but expansion. His son's life enriched by both the mother he'd lost too soon and this remarkable woman who had entered their world through chance and remained through choice. Moving day arrived with the organized chaos such transitions always entail. Claire had arranged for several Montgomery Corporation employees to volunteer with the heavy lifting, a gesture Ethan initially resisted but ultimately accepted as the practical necessity it was. Noah supervised the loading of his laboratory equipment, ensuring Astro 8 and the robot parts collection were handled with appropriate care. By evening, they were settled in their new home. Boxes everywhere, furniture arranged approximately where it belonged, exhaustion permeating every muscle. Claire had stayed throughout, directing traffic, unpacking kitchen essentials, making sure Noah's room was set up enough for him to sleep comfortably that first night. When Noah finally fell asleep, surrounded by familiar treasures in an unfamiliar room, Ethan and Claire collapsed onto the couch amidst half-unpacked boxes. "We did it." Claire's head dropped onto Ethan's shoulder, her voice heavy with fatigue. New home day one. Thank you. Ethan's gratitude encompassed more than just the day's help. For everything, for making this feel like a beginning instead of an ending. They sat in comfortable silence, too tired for deep conversation, but connected in the shared accomplishment. Eventually, Claire stirred, preparing to leave for her own apartment across town. Stay. Ethan's invitation was simple, without pressure or expectation. Just to sleep. It's late, we're exhausted, and there's a perfectly good guest bed already made up. Claire hesitated, awareness of what this represented. Another boundary crossed, another step toward fuller integration of their lives, evident in her expression. Noah might have questions in the morning. Ethan had considered this too. I think he'd understand. And it's a conversation we need to have eventually, about you staying over sometimes, about what that means. But tonight could just be about being too tired to drive home. Claire's smile held equal parts affection and amusement. Very practical framing, Mr. Engineer. I do have my moments. Ethan echoed her words from weeks before, earning a tired laugh. She stayed. In the guest room, just sleeping, as agreed, but the simple act of waking up under the same roof the next morning shifted something fundamental in their relationship. Noah accepted Claire's presence at breakfast without question, as if her belonging in their home on a Sunday morning was the most natural thing in the world. That day, they began the garden. The previous owners had left the small yard neglected, weeds claiming most of the space, but beneath the overgrowth lay potential. The three of them worked together under the spring sunshine, pulling weeds, turning soil, planting where the roses and sunflowers would go. Noah took his role as chief garden designer, seriously consulting the gardening book Claire had brought over, measuring spaces with careful precision. We need to put the tallest plants in the back so they don't block the sun from the shorter ones. Ethan watched his son directing Claire on proper mulch application, their heads bent together over the freshly turned earth, and felt a wave of gratitude so intense it nearly overwhelmed him. From the ruins of that earthquake day had grown something he could never have anticipated. Not just a business opportunity lost and found again, but this family forming around him, different from what he'd had with Sarah, but equally precious. The garden took shape over the following weekends. Rose bushes, carefully planted, sunflower seeds sown in neat rows, a small stone bench placed where they could sit and enjoy the results of their labor. Noah insisted on a bird bath and feeder, explaining that gardens needed visitors to be properly appreciated. As spring turned to summer, Walker Engineering Solutions continued to flourish alongside their garden. The Evergreen project concluded successfully, with efficiency improvements that led to a contract extension and referrals to two related manufacturing companies. The Grayson Dynamic Counterbalance System passed its initial tests, moving toward patent application, with Ethan's name listed as co-inventor. 6 months after the earthquake that had altered their lives' trajectories, Ethan faced an unexpected decision. A large engineering conglomerate approached him with an offer to acquire Walker Engineering Solutions. The number was substantial, enough to eliminate all financial concerns, to secure Noah's college education, to provide stability beyond what Ethan had imagined possible so quickly. The offer arrived via email on a Tuesday afternoon. Ethan stared at his computer screen, conflicting emotions swirling through him. This was success beyond his expectations, validation of his skills, recognition of what he'd built. But it also meant giving up control, becoming an employee again rather than a business owner. The independence he'd found, the flexibility to prioritize Noah while doing where he loved, might be compromised. Claire found him still at his desk that evening, the acquisition offer displayed on his monitor. She read it over his shoulder, a low whistle escaping her lips as she registered the amount. That's significant. Her voice was carefully neutral, not pushing in either direction. It would solve everything. Ethan's tone revealed his ambivalence. Financial security for Noah, No more worrying about landing the next client or managing cash flow, a guaranteed salary with benefits. Claire pulled up the second office chair sitting beside him. But, but it wouldn't be mine anymore, Ethan articulated the core of his hesitation. The vision, the direction, the values, they'd all become someone else's decision. I'd be trading ownership for security. Claire studied him thoughtfully. What does your gut tell you? The parallel to their conversation about keeping the apartment wasn't lost on Ethan. Once again, Claire was helping him identify what truly mattered beneath the practical considerations. That I'd be giving up something important, Ethan turned to face her directly. I've discovered I like building something of my own, setting my own course. The challenges are worth it for the freedom to choose my projects, to be available for Noah when he needs me, to create something that might be his someday if he wants it. Claire nodded, understanding in her eyes. Then I think you have your answer. But the money, Ethan felt compelled to acknowledge the practical reality. It would make everything easier. Would it? Claire challenged gently. Or would it just exchange one set of challenges for another? Financial security matters, Ethan, but so does fulfillment. So does showing Noah that some things are worth more than money. The conversation continued late into the night, Claire neither pushing nor pulling, but asking questions that helped Ethan clarify his own values and priorities. By morning, his decision was clear. He would decline the acquisition offer and continue building Walker Engineering Solutions independently. When Ethan explained his choice to William Montgomery during their monthly mentor lunch, Claire's father nodded with approval that meant more than Ethan expected. The CEO of Montgomery Corporation had become an unexpected ally over the past months, offering guidance on business strategy that respected Ethan's independence while sharing hard-earned wisdom. Building something lasting takes courage. William's weathered hands cupped his coffee mug, particularly turning down money when it's offered. But in my experience, the companies worth having are the ones that reflect their founders' vision and values, not just their technical capabilities. The validation from someone who had built a significant business empire carried weight. Even more meaningful was William's next statement, offered casually as they finished their meal. Claire seems happier than I've seen her in years, more grounded, more herself. His gaze was direct, assessing. Whatever you're doing in that department, keep it up. The oblique acknowledgement of Ethan's place in Claire's life, coming from her sometimes intimidating father, felt like a significant milestone. William Montgomery wasn't a man who offered praise easily or welcomed people into his inner circle without careful consideration. I intend to. Ethan met the older man's gaze steadily. She's important to me. To us. Noah and me both. William nodded once message received and acknowledged. Then let's discuss how to structure your next round of growth without sacrificing ownership. You'll need capital eventually, but there are ways to get it while keeping control. I made the mistake of selling my first company too early. I learned that lesson the hard way. The conversation shifted to business strategy, but something had changed. A respect between them that transcended their initial connection through Claire, a recognition of shared values despite different backgrounds. That night over dinner in the backyard, beside their now flourishing garden, Ethan shared his decision with Noah. His son listened with surprising attentiveness as Ethan explained the acquisition offer and why he turned it down. So we could have had a lot more money, but you didn't want to work for someone else again, Noah clarified, processing the concept. That's right, Ethan confirmed. It would mean I couldn't choose my own projects or set my own schedule. And I like being able to pick you up from school or take days off when you have events. Noah nodded, considering this with the seriousness he brought to all important matters. I think you made the right choice, Dad. Money is just money. But being able to do what you want and help people fix their problems, that's better. The simple wisdom from his 7-year-old son resonated deeply. Claire, sitting across the table, caught Ethan's eye with a smile that conveyed her agreement. That's exactly right, Noah. Claire raised her lemonade in a mock toast. To doing what matters instead of just doing what pays. To the robot division, Noah added their traditional toast, now a family catchphrase. The evening unfolded with the comfortable rhythm they'd established. Dinner, cleanup together, Noah's bedtime routine, quiet time for Ethan and Claire afterward. As they sat on the porch swing overlooking the garden, Sarah had inspired and they had created. Ethan found himself reflecting on the journey from that earthquake morning to this peaceful evening. I've been thinking about something. Claire's voice broke the comfortable silence. something I've wanted to discuss with you. The seriousness in her tone caught Ethan's attention. What is it? I've been offered a position at Westlake Consulting? Claire's words came carefully measured. Chief Talent Officer, overseeing all their recruitment and professional development programs. It's a significant step up from my role at Montgomery. The announcement hung in the air between them. Westlake was a prestigious firm, and the position sounded perfectly aligned with Claire's strengths, but it also represented a potential complication, a new demanding role just as their relationship was deepening, just as she was becoming more integrated into their family life. That sounds like an amazing opportunity. Ethan kept his voice supportive, processing his own mixed reactions. You'd be fantastic at it. Claire studied his expression, reading beneath his words. It would mean longer hours, at least initially. Some travel, though not extensive. More responsibility. The unspoken question hung between them. How would this affect what they were building together? Ethan thought carefully before responding, wanting to honor both Claire's career aspirations and their relationship. I think you should take it if it's what you want. The certainty in his voice reflected his genuine belief. You're brilliant at what you do, Claire. You deserve recognition for that room to grow professionally. Claire's eyes searched his face. And us? Our family dinners, weekend gardening, all the time we've been spending together. Ethan took her hand, intertwining their fingers. We'll figure it out. Relationships aren't about keeping everything exactly as it is. They're about growing together, supporting each other through changes. I supported your career before we met, and I support it now. The tension in Claire's shoulders eased visibly. I was worried you might see this as me pulling back, choosing career over us. Ethan smiled, understanding her concern. Isn't that exactly what you helped me work through with the acquisition offer? That sometimes the right choice isn't the easiest or most convenient one. Claire laughed softly, recognizing her own logic reflected back. Touché, Mr. Walker. Besides, Ethan continued, more serious now. I'm building a business while raising Noah. If anyone understands balancing professional ambition with personal priorities, it's me. We'll make it work, Claire. Different schedules maybe, but the same commitment. The relief and gratitude in Claire's expression confirmed he had found the right words. She leaned against him, her head fitting perfectly against his shoulder. There's something else I've been thinking about too. Something more personal. Ethan waited, giving her space to continue at her own pace. I love this house, Claire's voice softened. I love our Sunday mornings here, and game nights, and gardening with Noah. I love waking up with you and making breakfast together, and all the ordinary moments in between. The direction of her thoughts became clear, sending a wave of warmth through Ethan's chest. Where are you going with this? Is it Montgomery? Claire sat up, facing him directly now. I'm wondering how you'd feel about me being here all the time, about us living together, officially, intentionally as a family. The question represented another threshold in their carefully navigated relationship. Ethan considered it with the thoroughness they'd both come to value, thinking about practical implications and emotional readiness. Noah's adjustment, their still evolving relationship, the intertwining of their lives in this most concrete way. I'd like that. A lot. Ethan's response was simple but heartfelt. I think Noah would too. He already asked when you're coming over next, whenever you're not here. Claire smiled, but her expression remained serious. Are you sure it's not too soon? It's only been 6 months since we met. Ethan thought about time frames and readiness, about the arbitrary measures people use to gauge relationship milestones. Some people spend years together without truly knowing each other. I think we've been intentional enough about every step to trust our judgment on this one. Besides, you're already here most nights. This would just make it official. The practical observation made Claire laugh, tension-breaking. Very logical as always. I do have my moments. Ethan pulled her closer, their familiar exchange now a cherished ritual. They discussed logistics, Claire's lease ending in 2 months, how they'd explain the change to Noah, where her furniture would go, how to balance their different living habits. The conversation was both mundane and profound, the ordinary details of combining households underlaid with the significance of the commitment they were making. When they told Noah the next morning over breakfast, his reaction was characteristically straightforward. So Claire will be here every day, and all her stuff too. That's the plan. Ethan watched his son carefully, looking for signs of uncertainty or concern. How do you feel about that, buddy? Noah considered for a moment, then nodded decisively. I think it's good. Astro 8 needs both of you here for upgrades. And we can work on the garden more. And Claire makes better pancakes than you do. The simple acceptance delivered with a child's honest pragmatism made both adults laugh. Claire reached across the table to squeeze Noah's hand. Thank you, Noah. That means a lot to me. The emotion in her voice reflected what this acceptance meant. Not just Ethan welcoming her into his home, but Noah welcoming her into their family. Can we paint my room blue before you move in? Noah's attention shifted to practical matters. Mom always said we could paint it someday, but we never did. The mention of Sarah in this context, casual matter of fact connecting her to their current plans rather than setting her apart from them, felt like a blessing from beyond. Ethan caught Claire's eye, sharing the moment of recognition. Blue sounds perfect, Claire smiled at Noah. Maybe we could paint next weekend. Make it a family project, with sharks on one wall. Noah's imagination expanded rapidly, and maybe space on the ceiling, with glow-in-the-dark stars. The conversation spiraled into increasingly elaborate bedroom design plans, Noah's excitement building with each new idea. Ethan watched them, his son and the woman he loved planning their shared future with such easy joy, and felt a completion he hadn't experienced since before Sarah's death. Later that day, in a quiet moment while Noah worked on Astro 8's latest upgrade, Ethan found Claire in the garden, tending the yellow roses that had begun to bloom, their color bright against the green foliage. She looked up as he approached, sunshine catching in her hair, a smudge of soil on her cheek. He was struck suddenly by the journey that had brought them here. From a chance encounter in an earthquake's chaos to this peaceful garden, from strangers to family. All because he'd made one choice on a shaking platform, had valued a human life above professional opportunity. Something on your mind? Claire stood, brushing soil from her hands, reading his expression with the familiarity of true intimacy. Ethan gestured to the thriving garden, to the house behind them where Noah worked, to the life they were building together. All of this from an earthquake, from the worst moment coming on what should have been the best day. I never imagined then that missing that interview would lead to everything that matters. Claire stepped closer, her hand finding his. Sometimes the universe has better plans than we do, even when they arrive disguised as disasters. The wisdom in her words matched his own emerging understanding that life's most significant gifts often came through unexpected doors, that loss and opportunity were sometimes different faces of the same moment. I like our plan better than the one I had that morning. Ethan pulled her gently into his arms. Our garden, our family, our future. Claire's smile held all the certainty he felt, all the promise of what they were building together. So do I, Ethan Walker. So do I. Behind them, the yellow roses Sarah had loved turned their faces toward the sun roots deep in the soil of this new beginning, blooming with all the vibrant possibility of futures reimagined and hearts reborn.